1 month ago, I started selling crochet patterns on Etsy and I had no idea what to expect. Today I'm going to be sharing my shop stats, what works for me, and how much money I made. If you're thinking of starting an Etsy shop, this is everything I wish I knew. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Shae and I recently opened an Etsy shop called Made by Shae and I sell written crochet patterns. I decided to start selling on Etsy because I had a lot of video tutorials out on YouTube for you guys, but I wanted a written pattern option if you guys prefer written patterns or if you want it in addition to the video tutorial. I also just thought it was so fun to design the patterns, and yes, they are a lot of work, but it's worth it. So I was really excited to get started, but I didn't really have any expectations going into it. I honestly didn't think I would really make any sales at the beginning, but I actually did. So I'm going to tell you guys how I did it today. My ultimate goal with my Etsy shop is to have another stream of passive income because, as you guys know, selling crocheted physical items is a lot of work and it's time consuming and it's difficult to have that be your only stream of income as your crochet business. So having patterns is just another way that I can earn an income. And I also currently have like 6 or 7 income streams. A lot of them are really tiny and just starting up, but I do think that is important to me, at least when kind of starting and improving my crochet business, because doing only physical products for me probably isn't sustainable. So just so you guys know, the time period we're going to be looking at for this video is going to be May 22nd to June 22nd, because that was actually my first month, and I've now been selling for a couple more months now, but we're just going to focus on month 1 for today. But if you guys wanted to see more about like how it's been going in the first like 3 months, let me know. We are first just going to look into stats of how many sales I made, how much traffic I got, stuff like that, and then we'll look into where the traffic came from, and then I'll talk a little bit about what worked for me and what didn't work and the biggest lessons that I've learned. So the very first pattern that I posted on May 22nd was my boho wall hanging pattern, and I had posted this one first because I didn't have a video tutorial for it and I had a lot of people asking me for it on Pinterest and on YouTube. So I decided to post that one first, but all of my other patterns so far, aside from this one, do have video tutorials attached to them. Also, eventually I might make a video tutorial for this, I just have not done it yet. I then posted like my watermelon keychain pattern and my scrunchie pattern, and then I started doing some plushies as well, and I ended up posting a total of 11 different patterns onto my Etsy in the first month. The stats on here are going to be a little bit different than how I would want to share them with you guys, because it goes off of how many orders your shop made, not how many like total sales. So the orders don't account for if there was multiple items in the order. So that's what I don't really like about this, is that I can't tell exactly how many products I sold. So I'm gonna tell you guys how many orders sold. Basically on Etsy there is views and visits, and from my understanding, views is just like anytime your Etsy or anything on your Etsy shows up on somebody's screen. I think a visit is more of an in-depth visit to your shop. So on here again, it doesn't say how many views I had, although I think it was like 1,000 honestly, but the number of visits of people who actually stayed and like shopped around was 603 people. The highest number of visits I had on my shop was 31 visits on June 4th. But honestly, I don't even know if I posted the first pattern until the 23rd, and I still got 8 visits on the 22nd before I had anything on my shop. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure. Looking into some other stats, I had 40 favorited items from 32 different shoppers, and 10 different items got favorited, so almost all of them. I got 18 shop follows in that first month as well, which I'm so grateful for. I didn't even know shop following was a thing before I started on Etsy, so it's been really cool to figure out some of these things. I also will get into sales and discounts in a later section of the video, but that has been very helpful to me, and I'll also give you guys a little hint on if you guys do some of these things on my shop, you get a big reward, so stay tuned for that. Additionally, in my first month, I got 1 review, so thank you so much. I could be wrong about this, but I feel like people are more likely to review physical products that they buy on Etsy as opposed to PDF digital downloads. I could be wrong about that again, but obviously one of my goals in the future will be to get more reviews, but I'm still very grateful for the one that I got, and it was 5 stars, so that's amazing. and I believe it was on my velvet scrunchie pattern. Additionally, I also had one repeat buyer in my first month, so that was really amazing that somebody liked my patterns enough to purchase them multiple times. I am so appreciative of that. And finally, I reached 12 different cities with my shop. So that was 12 different cities in 4 countries. So that was pretty cool. Sorry, the sun just went behind a cloud, so it's kind of dark now. But getting into sales, like I said, it's not going to give all the different sales that I made, but it's going to give the amount of orders I made. So for the amount of orders in my first month, we had 14 of them, so that is amazing. And the total revenue, this does not include any fees, by the way, was $47.83, and that is in Canadian dollars. So that is really amazing. I'm super happy about that. And I was worried again that I wouldn't make any sales, but have more faith in yourself, guys. And I should have more faith in myself because I did make some sales. And the main goal for me in my first month was kind of trying to even out some of the fees that I had to pay to create the account. I actually had to pay over $20. I think it was like $28 or $26 to make my Etsy account, which I was scared about investing in, but it's only like $20. It's fine. And I did make that back now at this point. And then there's also so many fees that come along with listing an item and when you actually make a sale. So I did account for that in my prices, but it still does make your actual revenue go down a lot. So that is just revenue. I'll also go into how much total profit I made and like how much they actually sent me. So the net profit, which is what they actually would pay me, in May it was $6.97 with $17.23 of sales, by the way. And then I'll just do June because that's the only thing you can put on the monthly statements. So obviously another like week of that would be subtracted from this, but it was $28.41. So that was with $43.60 of sales. So minus all those fees, it was $28.41. I think my first payment from Etsy was around $20. I think it was just over $20. So pretty good. But again, a lot of those fees get taken off, and I think also what's included in that is the discounts, because I did run a lot of discounts in my first month. For the first like week, I offered 50% off, which I do highly recommend, and I'll get into that later, but I've pretty much been doing discounts every day to some extent because I feel like it really helps to get those first few sales. Moving forward now to how the shoppers actually found my shop. 22% of the visits were brought by Etsy, and the other 77% was from me, it says on here. But that would be things like direct traffic and social media and Etsy ads. Of the 22% that Etsy brought in, 112 of the visits were from the Etsy app and other Etsy pages. 15 of them were from Etsy search, and 8 of them were from Etsy marketing and SEO. I would like in the future, I don't even know what it is right now as I'm filming this, but I would like this number to kind of even out and be more 50-50 with the amount of visits I'm getting from Etsy itself and visits I'm getting from my personal social medias and stuff, just because I feel like then I'll know that like the search algorithm is really working for my stuff. But there is evidence here that it is being found on search pages and on Etsy apps, so I'm not too concerned about that right now. And then as for the visits, 433 were from direct and other traffic. So just clicking on that, because I don't really know what that means. Oh, I figured it out. So it was 398 people from YouTube. Thank you guys so much if you did that. And then another 12 people from also YouTube and 1 from, I don't even know what that is. But very happy to see that people are going from my YouTube to check out my Etsy. And then other social medias, I post all my patterns on Pinterest, so I had 31 visits from there. And then an additional 3 from Instagram. And I just started my Instagram the same time, so I'm glad to see that some people were going from my Instagram to my Etsy. But obviously I'm going to continue growing that in the future. And then I know I mentioned that Etsy ads were included in that, but I actually did not purchase any Etsy ads in my first month. I would have done that if I wasn't making any sales, because I have heard that purchasing Etsy ads, even just $1 a day, does help. I can't speak for that personally because again, I haven't purchased any Etsy ads, but I will consider doing that in the future, and I have heard that it works for other people. There's also something called off-site ads, which I guess Etsy automatically does, and they basically just take a bigger fee if you make a sale from Etsy ads. but they'll basically put your listing on things like Google, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Bing, and Etsy publishing partner sites. I'm reading that directly from the page. And I can't do the custom like stats thing for this, but just looking at all time so far this year, I have had 9 visits come from ad traffic, and it was all from Google. I'm just gonna keep throwing lots of stats at you guys, and then we'll get into the discussion about all of the details. Looking now at what my best-selling and most viewed patterns were, my most viewed pattern was my boho circle wall hanging pattern, which makes sense because it was the first one that I posted. It also got the most favorites, which was 14, but it did not get the most orders or sales. The one that did get me the most sales was my velvet scrunchie pattern, which only got 43 views and 10 favorites, but it actually got 8 orders. So that was also my highest revenue pattern of the month, which was $19.24. It's also one of my cheaper patterns, probably one of the cheapest because the pattern is quite simple, but it was still great that that one sold and that you guys really liked it. As I mentioned before, that was also the one that got the review. And then as for other patterns that did get orders, my watermelon keychain got 2 orders, my no-sew turtle got 1 order, my lavender bookmark pattern got 3 orders, and my no-sew bee pattern got 1 order. So that was really amazing. I'm so grateful for that. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the sales that I ran. Again, I can't exactly remember, but I know that within that first week where I was running the 50% off sale was when I did get a lot of my initial sales. It was also when I launched my Etsy, and I was sharing that with you guys on my YouTube community tab and also on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. So I do think that was helpful to kind of like get people to check out my shop and maybe buy some patterns that they have been waiting to become written patterns, but they have only seen the tutorials so far, stuff like that. I think that helped bring in some sales, but I do think the 50% off was a really big motivator for people because I know it would be for me. So obviously in that first week where I was running that sale, it wasn't really about the money again. This whole month wasn't really about money, but it was more so about getting some sales on my shop because I know it can be kind of suspicious if someone has no sales on their shop, even if it says they're a new account. Some people might be less inclined to purchase from them, so I was really wanting to get those first sales, and luckily I did. So I do recommend trying out discounts if you are trying to get those first few sales. And also I am still running discounts all the time because I'm still trying to get those sales. And I also just think it's a great way to incentivize people to purchase from you. I also have a code for my YouTube community, which is 20% off if you use code YouTube. So I just decided to do that to thank you guys for your support, and if you do come from here, you can get a discount on my patterns. So it does seem like YouTube was my biggest traffic source. So that's amazing. Again, thank you guys so much if you did visit my shop from YouTube. But it does make sense because I do have 15,000 subscribers on here. I have a bit of an audience, so it makes sense that if I was promoting it on here, some people would go there, but I'm still so grateful for that, obviously. And then, like I mentioned, additional traffic sources were Instagram, but that was very small. Again, I only had like 3 visits from Instagram, but it was a brand new account, and all I've really been doing on Instagram for promoting my patterns is posting reels that some of my patterns are included in, posting pattern spotlights, but I post them like after I post the pattern, like well after. It's not like a pattern launch post. I do stories whenever I post a pattern, and I also put a link to the pattern if they would like to purchase it or check it out. And I have found that that is a good way to get visits. Again, it wasn't that many in the first month, but I just like to let people know on there that I have released a new pattern, and then I will also eventually do a post where I go a little bit more in depth about what the pattern includes, and I have really enjoyed doing that, so I think I will continue doing that in the next few months. And then another big traffic source for me was Pinterest. So every time I post a pattern to Etsy, I will directly from Etsy go to share on the listing, and then I will pin it to my patterns and tutorials Pinterest board. And then I will also get all of the listing photos that I put on the Etsy listing, and I will put all of those as pins on Etsy, and I will directly link the pattern to that pin. And I'll save these to all of the boards that it makes sense to. I have like a crochet inspo board, I have lots of plushie boards, I have my patterns and tutorials board, and so I will just save it to whichever one is appropriate. I have also linked my patterns on all of my existing tutorials that are on my Pinterest. So if I pinned the thumbnail of my turtle tutorial, say, I also linked the Etsy written pattern. But I still need to finish doing that on my description boxes on YouTube and to just let people know that there is a written pattern if they would like for each of the tutorials. Obviously, there was also some traffic from Etsy. I do think a big part of that is the keywords, the tags, and stuff like that. I was no professional at that. Of course, I have like my Redbubble shop and stuff, so I'm not a complete stranger to the importance of SEO and keywords, also my YouTube. But I wasn't really sure about how it would work on Etsy, and I was a little bit afraid that since there's so much crochet on Etsy and so many things in general, that my listings may not make the first page. Like, I didn't know if they would make any page, but I have noticed that some of mine are making the top of the page, which is really amazing considering I'm not even buying any Etsy ads. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I do use some websites and stuff to find some good keywords. If I write a title on Etsy, they also sometimes share a maybe slightly stronger title, and you can click and automatically add that title to your pattern. So they kind of base it off of what I put in my title, but then they kind of maybe decrease the amount of words or the amount of repeating words, and that really helps. So I noticed they started doing that for me, so that was really helpful. But yeah, they do recommend, I think, under 14 words for titles, and also that you don't repeat words. So I have been keeping that in mind and just trying to get as many of those like no-sew, quick, easy PDF pattern, crochet, plushie, things that people will really be searching for on my titles. You can also look at Marketplace Insights and search up like, say, crochet pattern and see how much it's being searched and what the conversion rate is like on that. And I found that to be very helpful. I do use that for a majority of my patterns, and if I'm like, oh, I kind of want to put one of the tags as like ocean friends, but I don't know if that's something that gets searched, I'll search it up on there, see if it's getting searched, and if it isn't, I'll find something else that is being searched more, and if it is, I'll definitely add that in my title and also on my tags. Additionally, descriptions are an important part of Etsy, so I have found. I try and make mine nice and cute and informative, but also have those first probably 2 or 3 lines be very keyword dense, I guess, to really get Etsy to know what I'm selling and make it easier for people to find it. I honestly didn't really know how effective this was going to be, but it seems to be doing pretty well for me, so I'm going to continue to have those first few lines be super keyword dense, and then have things like materials and information on how to download the pattern and like disclaimers and stuff and the pattern features all after that. I have got some feedback on my patterns and they have been positive, so thank you guys so much for that. And I do think that having them be beginner friendly and having clear instructions, making them really cute, and having video tutorials included also, I think have helped to kind of make my patterns stand out. Other things that have worked for me has been consistency. I had a lot of patterns that I had been writing probably about a month in advance of posting on Etsy for the first time that I had been working on. So I started with the pattern template itself, and then I also had to write a whole bunch of patterns. So I did do that, and I was just kind of saving them so that once I launched my Etsy, I would have a lot to post. Just because I wanted my shop to be nice and full, have a lot going on and a lot of options for people, because I know a lot of people like to crochet different things. Since I also did have my tutorials for a lot of these things as well, it was pretty easy for me to just write a pattern with that. I didn't have to design it as I went or anything, so that was nice. But I did post 11 patterns in my first month, so I was able to post a few per week, which I do feel like did help me, and I do try and continue to post patterns consistently. I've slowed down a little bit now because I'm on to my last few that are tutorials, and then I will start also having to design for Etsy as well. But I try and post around 2 patterns per week, and then I'll make sure that I'm doing all the launch announcements and everything on things like YouTube community tab, Instagram, and Pinterest, and sometimes TikTok as well. Also, obviously something that worked really well for me is having a YouTube channel and an existing audience before starting my Etsy. Although I don't think this is necessary at all, I do think that if I didn't have this following, I might have to do more things like Etsy ads or, you know, just be posting on other social medias, because advertising and marketing is such an important part of any business, but especially in today's world, and especially if you're selling a digital online product. So I do think that has helped me, and I'm not going to tell you guys like you have to start a YouTube channel if you want to do Etsy, because obviously that's not true. But finding ways to market your business in a way that works for you, I feel like is really important. So that is what worked for me. But again, I'm getting traffic from other places too. YouTube is just a big one for me. Moving on to what didn't work. Luckily, there's not too much that didn't work. The whole process has been pretty smooth, but it did take a long time, a lot of time and effort to get this up and going. So I think having that perseverance and a little bit of discipline as well, because these things are not always going to be the most fun. Again, I have really enjoyed opening my Etsy shop. I do think there's a lot of fun elements to it, like designing and just like creating your own shop. I think that's really fun and something I've never done before. But some of the intricacies and research you have to do has been kind of daunting and time consuming. But I think as long as you kind of push through, these things have already become more streamlined for me and more automatic. So I do think that getting your process down and just figuring out what works for you to post and upload and everything as quickly and efficiently as possible is really key. One little tip also, just so you don't have to rewrite everything every time you post something, is I will start by copying one of my previous listings that is like similar to the one that I'm posting. So if it's a keychain, I will go to like my watermelon keychain listing and copy that. Works for plushies and whatever else. And then I will just edit the title, edit the description, edit the pattern obviously, and the listing photos and everything to kind of support the pattern that I'm now posting. But having that basis, that's kind of helped to make it more efficient in my opinion. I think some other things that were kind of difficult for me in the beginning was figuring out like sizing for the listing photos, because basically on like Etsy search, or most times people are looking at your listing, it's in like a smaller box than what I thought. I thought it was like the full square, but you can actually go on when you're putting the thumbnail and see what it's gonna look like on different like desktop, on iPhones, whatever. And I was noticing that a lot of my stuff was getting cut off, and so there was a lot of trial and error to make my listings look clear and fully like on all of the different layouts that they can offer. And if you guys are looking for information on like how big to make your listings or your patterns or anything like that, I will go into that in a future video if you're interested. But those were some different challenges I had to overcome. Another thing was just the fear about making sales, the fear of losing money, the fear of trying something new that I didn't have any experience doing before. I have done a lot of things with my crochet business for a long time now. I have been selling at markets for over 10 years. I have had my YouTube channel for 3 years, and so starting this Etsy has been something new to me. And it has been challenging, but it's also been very rewarding and fun. I've learned so much stuff, so I'm really grateful for it overall. But those fears definitely did stop me for a good few weeks of actually starting this, especially when I realized that opening a shop now comes with additional fees that it used to not. I was super discouraged. I shared that in vlogs. I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. But I just told myself it was like kind of like a booth fee. And although it was scarier because you're kind of up against thousands of different listings compared to maybe 30 other vendors, I just had to kind of take that leap of faith and know that if it didn't work, I would try other things. But luckily for me, I do think the decision has paid off. Let's just move into some quick lessons I've learned since opening my shop. I think one thing is, although I did want to have a lot of patterns ready before I opened my shop, you don't have to post 100 different things before you get started. It's okay to just have one pattern up there or one whatever you're selling up there before you go ahead and start your shop. The best thing is to just start it, start promoting it, start getting those views and sales, and you can always continue adding to it later. I do still try and be consistent with it because I do feel like it helps, but I know that I can't produce quality patterns if I'm posting like 30 per week. So try and manage that and create a schedule that works for me, especially because I'm still a full-time student, so I don't have all the time in the world like I would like to dedicate to my business yet. But I also am starting this now because I do hope that by the time I graduate with my degree in December, that I will be able to continue doing this as full-time as I possibly can. So I think starting it now was really perfect timing for me. Even though I'm not able to dedicate all my time towards this, I still think that just starting has really helped me. And it's also given me the confidence that I can continue to have this as an income stream and as another part of my business in the future. Another lesson is that SEO matters more than you think. I believe that stands for search engine optimization. I'm not 100% sure. But again, this is just things like keywords, titles, descriptions that tells Etsy what you guys are selling and pushes it out to people. So really keeping in mind what the pattern is, what is the selling points, and making sure to include that in as many places as possible without it being too repetitive at the same time is very important, because if you just post a pattern for a giraffe, but you just put like giraffe crochet or something as the title, it's not going to get as many views as if you put a lot of keywords, time, and energy into that title and everything else that goes along with it. Another thing I have learned is that my crochet tutorials that are more popular are not necessarily going to be more popular on Etsy, and also my crochet tutorials that are not as popular might be much more popular on Etsy. That has been really interesting to me, because I will go and post a pattern and be like, oh, not too many people made this one on YouTube, so I don't think it's gonna do that great on here, but I'm just gonna post it anyways, and then it will make a lot of sales. And in contrast, I will post one of my really popular YouTube tutorial patterns and think it's gonna get a lot of sales, and then it doesn't. So I do think that maybe the Etsy people or the Etsy audience, or even the kind of patterns that people want as a written pattern compared to just a tutorial, does change a lot. So that's been interesting for me to learn, and it does show me that just posting every single one that I can, no matter if it's popular or unpopular on YouTube, or if I've even posted on YouTube, it is kind of just trial and error to see what is working on Etsy. One thing that I did not do that I have done now and that I will continue to do was upload pattern bundles. And the main reason I didn't do this in my first month was because I didn't have those patterns already up on my account, and I wanted to have them all available separately before I launched them as a bundle. But I now currently have 2 pattern bundles up, and I plan on posting more. And basically they are just bundles of the patterns at a discounted price, and I have a Ocean Friends one, which is so cute, and I also have a best-selling Marky Plushies bundle. These are also where you can make a little bit more profit in selling patterns, because obviously you don't usually sell patterns for very much money. It's not like a physical plushie like that's gonna make you $20+, but the bundles, even though they're offered at a discounted rate, they can still make you more than $2. Another thing that I think is important to consider is not to compare yourself to other people. I think maybe looking at other people's shops and seeing what's working for them, and you know, learning about how they got started and stuff may be helpful, but I think when it comes to comparing sales or number of patterns they have up or something like that, it can be kind of discouraging to see that as a new seller. But it's also not fair to compare yourself to those people who have maybe been selling for years, have really big audiences, have really popular patterns. I know that I was looking at a lot of people and I'm like, I'm never gonna get to that point, but that doesn't help anything. And also, if they can do it, so can you. One thing that I've been keeping in mind a lot this year has been, why is my dream life not attainable if I see other people living it every single day? So if you guys are hoping to start this but you just don't know if you can do it, I encourage you to try anyway, because if somebody else can do it, you can too. In terms of looking ahead to the future on what I might do to improve my shop and continue growing, I will definitely continue running discounts. And like I mentioned earlier, I have actually recently increased my discounts for things like if you favorite one of my patterns, if you purchase a pattern and get a thank you email, and just if you have interest in my shop, you can set up all of these little discounts on Etsy. And I have recently increased all of mine to have really big rewards. So for example, if somebody abandons their basket, if they put one of my patterns in their basket but then they don't purchase it, they get sent a 40% off discount. If somebody favorites one of my patterns, which you guys could go do and then get the 50% discount, I decided to offer that because I can't be doing a 50% off sale all the time on my shop, but I did think an additional reward for people who favorite it and really enjoy it would be a really great thing to try. So if you favor an item, you get 50% off. My thank you offer for purchasing a pattern is also 50% off. And again, all these are temporary right now, so if you're watching this in the future and they have changed, then I'm sorry. I don't plan on keeping these like this forever permanently. I've already changed them so many times, so just keep that in mind when I'm saying this. If you favorite one of my items and it's now 20% off, I might change them in the future. However, they are working for me right now, so we're keeping them the same as of right now. And then there's also the interested shopper offer, which from my understanding is just if they interact with your shop a lot, then they will receive an email with 25% off. And then my code YouTube is also 20% off. And then you can also do shop-wide sales. I've done 50% off, I've done 30, 25, stuff like that. Etsy recommends that you do 25% off or more because it encourages people to purchase, but I've literally seen people do like 8% off and it still will push it as a discounted item. So I recommend doing discounts even if it's just going to be a very small percentage because anything helps. Another thing is I will continue to grow my social medias, including YouTube, but mainly like Instagram and TikTok and Pinterest that are a little bit smaller for me, to continue being able to have new audiences to promote my patterns to. I would also really like to make a Facebook account, but Facebook is not my favorite social media. I find it very confusing, and I think it's funny how a lot of like older people will mostly have Facebook, and I understand why it's so confusing to them because it's confusing to me too. I'm like, you guys should try a different social media if you want something easier because this is really confusing. But I do think that Facebook could be another good audience for me to tap into, so I will hopefully be doing that in the future. But continuing to be active on those social medias I think will be really important to me going into these next few months of my business. Another thing I'd love to do is improve my photos and listings. I did improve all of my listing photos pretty quick into launching my shop and posting the patterns. I changed a few of the listings that I had up already, and then I continued doing that for the future ones. And I just took my photos outside instead of inside just for some better lighting and a clearer background. And I do think that has really helped me, so I'm going to continue doing those outdoor photos in the future. Even if like I bring out a blanket and I don't want like the grass background, I think it would still be really nice to have that natural light source. I will also definitely be creating more bundles like I mentioned. I did a poll recently on my community tab. Make sure you're checking that out if you want to kind of influence some of the things that I'm posting and just get updates. And I asked you guys which bundle you wanted to see next, and I think you guys said the no-sew plushies bundle. So I will be working on that and posting it very soon hopefully, but I also have ones like a self-care bundle coming soon, a gift bundle coming soon, and also a keychain bundle. So I'm excited to continue posting all my patterns, but also my bundles. I was lucky enough in my first month to hit 10 sales, which was a big accomplishment for me. I was super proud of that, and Etsy like will send you like a little congratulations for that, so I thought that was so fun. And I have now also surpassed 20 sales, so that is amazing, and I'm super grateful for anyone who has checked out my patterns or purchased from me. I really appreciate it. In the future though, I would still like to continue getting those first sales. I would like to increase my sales a good amount just so that if people don't know who I am, I don't want that to be the only factor when people are considering purchasing from me, like knowing me already from social media or something. I would like, you know, that organic traffic from Etsy or people who have never seen me before to still be really interested in my patterns. So I think continuing to improve those reviews and those sale numbers will really help that. I also would like to obviously continue generating revenue from this, and I'm still in that kind of point where I have surpassed the maybe $26 fee that it was to start out the business, but aside from that I haven't made a ton of additional revenue, and that is completely fine. Again, I didn't expect this to be anything crazy, but I think continuing to work into the positives now will be really fun. Overall, I'm really happy with how this first month went on Etsy. I have learned so much, and I'm really excited to see how my shop continues growing and the things I continue to do in the future. If you guys are thinking of starting an Etsy shop, I hope this gave you a realistic look at what it can be like in the first month, and I hope you learned something about how you guys can get started. If you guys enjoyed this Etsy content, please like the video to let me know, and comment if you have an Etsy shop or if you're planning to start one and how that has gone for you. I always reply to every comment, so if you guys want to chat about anything in the comments, I will totally reply to you as fast as I can, and we can have a further discussion about just Etsy and selling crochet patterns. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more videos about this. I also post lots of other videos here on the channel, tutorials like I mentioned, ideas videos, vlogs, market content, and everything like that. And also hype the video. That really helps smaller creators get pushed out in the algorithm. To do that, you just go to the little 3 dots or more option and click hype. You can do it 3 times in a week, so please do that if you enjoyed this video because it really helps smaller creators get noticed on this YouTube platform where there are people with millions of subscribers. Also, I will link my Etsy shop for you guys to check out, and if you're interested in checking out any of my patterns, they'll be there for you. And if you favorite them, you get an additional discount. But thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye!